everybody. So nice to be here with you on the GlobalLight Broadcast for July. Let's jump right in. Today, what I want to talk about in my segment is our programming and how we can't outwill our subconscious programming. Have you ever noticed if there's something that you want to change, something that's important to you, and you go about trying to take the action steps, sometimes it just doesn't work out. We sabotage ourselves. It's like dieting. It's like deciding just you're going to drop everything, change overnight, and it doesn't work, does it? It feels restrictive. It feels negative. It feels the opposite of everything we want to be feeling. We want to be feeling inspired. We want it to feel positive. We want these changes because they're going to bring us what? Usually joy, happiness, independence, freedom, things that make us feel good. So why does it feel so bad on the road to get there? This is why. We have programming around it, and we're really gonna get into some of these layers today, and we're gonna talk about a topic that's really important. We're gonna talk about money, but we'll get there in a minute. So what I want to talk about first is the understanding that we all have programming. Every single one of us on this planet has programming. 2, we are innocent to it. It was not your fault. 3, you have choice now if you want it to still run your life or not. This programming is no longer occurring every day, but if you watched my segment last month, I dropped a lot of information in it about how by the age of 35, neuroscience is showing today that we are basically a set of memorized behaviors, which means we're not conscious most of our day, which means 95% of our day is being run by what? Our programming. So you have to get honest about your negative beliefs without any judgment, right? We all have programming. We all come by it quite innocently. But now, when we become consciously aware that we don't have the things we want, or we're not where we want to be, and there's more we want to be living, experiencing, doing, contributing, then we have to begin to understand the mechanics of our own subconscious mind, because it is without a doubt our most powerful ally. And when we learn to harness that, and when we learn to work with that, reprogram that, instruct that, then our life changes and becomes those changes that we want to be experiencing. So how does this work? Let's break this down. Up until the age of 7, everything is going in as programming. And what I mean by that is, at 7, we begin to develop what we call in hypnotherapy the critical factor. And the critical factor is that inner chatterbox, that voice inside our head that says, be careful, don't go here, not sure I like them, don't trust this might be okay, this might not be okay. That chatterbox that keeps talking, that we have to quiet in meditation, that we have to relax. This is online at 7, and it matures between 7 and 11. It starts to begin to explain why teenagers, everything becomes a negotiation, because that critical factor is the analyzer. It's not just the chatterbox, it is analyzing data. It is constantly analyzing what you are seeing in the world, taking it in and comparing it against your programming. Why? Because your programming is designed to keep you safe. Where does it come from? It comes from experiences that we had when we were young and didn't have any resources for. We weren't capable at 5 to say, this circumstance that I'm in right now is making me feel unsafe. We just say, I am unsafe. And our subconscious mind does 2 things. It generalizes. So whatever that circumstance was, for example, you were in a car accident with your family when you were 5. No one was seriously hurt, but it was very scary, right? So what happens? Subconscious mind says, danger, cars are dangerous. When we're in cars, we're unsafe. Compound later in life, every time you're in a car, you have this unexplained anxiety that just feels like you're not comfortable in a car, or you're not comfortable on a plane because you experienced turbulence once. Subconscious mind generalizes and says, to keep you safe, ooh, all planes are dangerous, all cars are dangerous. So we have to understand that this becomes a belief that runs our life. So let's say later in your future, you decide that you're going to do a job that requires you to travel, requires you to speak to people, requires you to be in cars and on trains and on planes. And every time you're about to travel, you have this anxiety, and it's unexplainable. It doesn't feel conscious to you. You're not aware of it. It's just deep down. Well, that's programming, and you can't outwill that, can you? You can maybe take things to help relax you. You can help pharmaceutically or herbally. You can try to focus your mind, and that takes a lot of willpower. But do you actually get to the place of, I'm really enjoying this. How lucky am I? This is so much fun. I'm chatting with people and getting to meet people, and I love traveling to new places. No, you don't. You get through it, but it's hard and it's sweaty and it's gritty, and when you get off that plane, you want to kiss the ground. This is programming. You can't outwill that. Why? Because your mind is designed to keep you safe. So we have to really understand how that works. So let's just say that right now, the world, let's talk about money. Let's say that we can justify our programming. And what I mean by that is it's so nuanced. We have to become detectives of ourselves, of our own programming. Why? Because if we don't, we tend to say things like, well, it's inflation. My boss wasn't able to give me a raise. The job and promotion that I was really hoping for, I didn't get. Ooh, maybe it's me. Maybe I'm not good enough for it. Maybe it's because all the men get it. Maybe we start to, if we're not careful, justify our programming. Because it's so unconscious. Remember, 95% of our day we are living from our programming without even realizing it. And when did that programming start? Before the age of 7, and then compounded throughout our life. How did it become programming? We didn't have an analyzer. We didn't have resources yet. We hadn't matured enough to learn to take in data and associate it against our programming, against our subconscious mind. So everyone has some form of experience that made them scared or uncertain or self-judgmental. Why? Because before the age of 7, remember, our authority figures, our parents, our caregivers, our teachers, everything they told us, our survival depended on it, didn't it? Our well-being required our caregivers to provide everything for us. So we are designed and wired to take all of that in as programming to keep us safe. But not all of us had happy childhoods. Not all of us had positive experiences. Not all of us had perfect lives, because there's no such thing. And here's the thing. Even if you didn't have major trauma in your past, keep in mind, subconscious mind generalizes. Its job is to keep you alive. Its job is to keep you safe. So what do you think it's going to hold on to? What do you think it's going to keep near the surface? The happy memories, or the incidences that you were scared, or you were feeling unloved, or you were feeling invisible or hurt? There was a heightened emotional experience, right? And the subconscious mind will prioritize the dominant of two beliefs, the dominant of all beliefs. So what we hold near the surface, which is what we project out and what we compare all our intake data against, are the ones that had the most negative impact on us. That, 30, 40 years later, is how we're seeing the world, how we're projecting our opinions out onto the world and attracting back that which is in alignment to it. So you got to get in there and amend that, right? We have to let go of the judgment. We have to, at some point, take responsibility as a positive step and say, you know what? I don't want to live this way anymore. I know I deserve happiness. I know I deserve health. I know I deserve affluence. Why is my body breaking down? Why am I not making enough money? Why am I always feeling worried and stressed? Now, if we can get past it's the news, it's the government, it's the societal corruption, and instead turn that lens around and say, but I know and truly believe that I can live well in spite of that. What do I need to do to figure it out? This, right here, this is it. So if I were to ask you, if I were to say, let's talk about money, what are your beliefs around money? If you are not making enough money, if you're not feeling affluent enough in your life, then there is some negative programming around money. You might not be consciously aware of it. Consciously, your first response to me might be, I think money's fabulous and I want more of it. But do you? Because if you did and there was nothing in the way, you'd have that. So yes, the world right now is becoming more expensive. I've never heard in the last 15 years that I've lived in the US, all of a sudden the news is reporting about don't move out from home, stay home, move back home, commute with gas. A lot of stuff is being projected out about how to manage because inflation rates are going to go up again. And let's stay out of politics with this about whose fault it is. Let's just live well in spite of it. So how do you do that? If your answer to me was super positive, then great. Your conscious mind believes that to be true. But what's your programming? Because there is programming. Now here's where I want you to stay with me, because boy, oh boy, when we mix spiritual purpose and money together, we get a whole lot of confusion and complication in the mix, don't we? Sometimes people back in the recesses of their mind think that spiritual work should be free. We've talked about that a lot. Or that we just sort of lay back and say the universe is going to take care of me, but I don't have to do anything about it. That's not really working out, is it? It's a lovely thought. It's a beautiful belief. And here's the nuance. I believe you can have a thriving business and life without having to work crazy hard for it. But I do not believe in having no practicality whatsoever, because we're human beings, we're running businesses, we're providing services. It requires action. It requires taking care of those businesses. So we don't just sit back passively in life and say, it'll come to me. And if it doesn't, well, it wasn't meant to be. I'm not on board with that. First of all, I like way too much control. So I like to get in there and look at all the business aspects. But if you're working really hard and it's not producing, or you're sabotaging yourself every time you're about to get successful, something breaks down, something happens, somebody else needs you, somebody else has an accident, you need to go take care of someone else, that's worth looking at. Because this is what I really want you to hear. This is the big piece for today. If we really believe that we are capable and deserving, and it's not coming in, and we're working for it, then you've got programming around affluence that is conflicting with your values. And nobody really talks about that. So here's what I mean by that. If money doesn't line up with your values, your beliefs will activate your programming, and that will sabotage you at every turn to make sure that you never compromise your values. So what does that look like in practical terms? What does that mean? Let me give you an example. And I want you to try this right now. I want you to think about this as I explain this. If I ask you, what are your negative beliefs about money? Because again, if we're not bringing in what we want to be bringing in and it's in conflict with our values, then there's some negative belief around money. So just let the first thing come into your mind. Don't try to think it through with your conscious mind, because the subconscious mind will kick it out if you just allow it. So right now, I just want you to close your eyes for 1 second and take a deep breath in. And a big, long, full and complete exhale out. Do that one more time. Just feel your body relaxing and shifting into parasympathetic drive. Just letting go of your thought for a minute. And one more. And exhale. And I say to you, what are your negative beliefs about money? Money makes people what? Finish that sentence. Money makes people. All right. So what was your answer? Let's use selfish as an example. Money makes people selfish. They don't care about anyone else. They just take care of themselves. The rich get richer. It makes people selfish. Ooh. That tells me immediately, I know, that you have a core value of connection, of community, of everyone doing well. You have a vision of a world where we all thrive, and you contribute to that. Okay, so we've got a core value of community, but we've got a belief that money can make people really selfish. So what happens every time you're about to become successful with your business? Opportunities are lining up, you're working, people love your ideas, things are going well, and just as you're about to take the next step, that programming says, if we become successful, we become selfish, and that is going to compromise our core value. We can't let that happen. That's not who we are. And then everything starts to fall apart. You get that? You understand what's happening in your subconscious mind with your negative belief about it that came from wherever, came from somewhere. You knew someone, you had an experience, you saw someone, your father believed that, your mom told you stories of growing up. It doesn't matter. It came from programming. We could find that if we needed to know, but what really matters is to understand what your belief is about money and how it conflicts with your core value. So let's take another example. Money makes people slaves. Ooh, they just have to work all the time, 9 to 5. How many times do we hear that? Europe, you work to live. You don't live to work. And everywhere else in North America, we live to work. Well, if we take that on as a belief, that's programming. That's running our mind all day. We got to work hard, got to keep going. We work, we live to work. We just keep working. So what is that? Oh, that's like slavery. Money makes people slaves. Okay, then I know you have a core value of freedom, of wanting to be able to enjoy your life as you make your money. And as you contribute to society, you want to have independence with that. Maybe you have an entrepreneurial mind, but you never quite get that business off the ground, right? You're always working for someone else, always making someone else more money. So what happens? You keep working, right? 95%. We are just a set of memorized behaviors, and we don't seem to get off the wheel, but we have all these ideas and we never seem to get them going. And every time we start to get close and things work out, what happens? That belief, that programming, that belief activates our programming. Programming says money makes people slaves. Don't do it. So what happens? Sabotage. You're going to become a slave if you create this business that you have to run all the time. You're going to be working even more than you are right now. So you have to understand what your negative belief is about money. And then you have to get in there and reprogram that. So what would that reprogramming look like? Well, for someone who believed that money made people slaves, it would be about creating new suggestions about how money gives you more freedom and independence and ability to live your life and enjoy your life and teach others how to do the same, help others do the same. You understand, we have to start changing those old beliefs. Same with the earlier example. Money makes people selfish. So what would that reprogramming look like? Well, it would look like money it gives people more resources to do more good with it, to be more philanthropic with it. So money makes me capable, hear that word, money makes me capable of doing more for other people. And we have to make that the new positive dominant belief. So we have to understand, first of all, what our negative beliefs are. And they are not what we consciously think we are. Think they are. What happens is we think we understand, but we're speaking from our logic, and our logic is in our conscious mind, and that is not necessarily what our programming is. So how do we access that programming? Well, hypnotherapy is my choice. That is my chosen field, where we start to really pull back the layers of you and understand what your core values are. And when we understand what your core values are, and we see what you're capable of, right? We start to bring strategies to it. That's when we start to collapse the old beliefs, because these beliefs, right? These beliefs, positive beliefs, they drive our capabilities. So it becomes easier. Remember that feeling. It's supposed to feel good. It's supposed to feel easy. Losing weight doesn't have to be hard. Changing our money structure doesn't have to be hard. As long as we understand what our programming is, our capabilities come right on board. But if we have negative beliefs, then they really limit our capabilities. But if we have positive beliefs, our capabilities open right up. You're starting to put this together, starting to make sense, where if we could just sort of put the world on a shelf for a minute and turn that camera around and say, okay, but if this is my experience and I believe I can influence my own experience, and you can, then what am I missing? Why does this keep happening? What's in the way here? And we can apply this to health. We can apply this, obviously, to money and to well-being and to feelings of happiness. We apply this to our own joy, our feelings of joy versus fear and depression and anxiety and all the labels that are going up and up and up and up. I gave you a lot of stats last month, especially with our young people. So you matter. What you believe influences the trajectory of all of us. And if you have core values of a world where we all thrive, and these changes that are occurring right now and what's playing out right now, influencing that to go in a more positive direction, then it behooves you to live your life as powerfully and as successfully and as filled with health and joy and independence and affluence without guilt. So let's go a little bit further. What happens if you've done a lot of work, including hypnotherapy, and lots of things have changed, but we didn't quite collapse it. I worked with a client one time. Let me tell you a story, because this is where past life gets really interesting and is phenomenal to facilitate as well. Past life is not something we jump into just as entertainment or, to just sort of poke around and see. It's a really powerful tool for healing when it's the right fit. Hear those words, key, when it's the right fit. So I had worked with a client who had changed so much in her life and was doing really well. But she came back to me after 6 or 8 sessions and said, there's one thing that just is so sticky, and I just haven't figured it out. And she told me, it's like I'm terrified of being wealthy. Hear those words, right? It's like I'm terrified of being wealthy and successful, because everyone will find out I'm just a fraud. I'm just as scared as everyone else is, but I put on a good face, and I'm afraid that if I become too successful, they're going to see behind that mask. And she said, and something else is weird too. Every time I go to my favorite restaurant, I almost have a panic attack when I'm there, and I have no idea why. So that doesn't sound like they're connected, and yet it all came out together at the same time. So they are connected. So after doing some work, we went into a past life, and we gave the subconscious mind the instruction to go to the origin, the lifetime where the origin of this pattern playing out is. And she saw herself in the early 1900s as a man who had basically come from nothing, hid it, had lied and cheated his way into high society, made up this whole background that wasn't true, had made a good solid fortune and was about to make an even bigger fortune investing in railway, was becoming one of the key members of building railways at that time. And there was an accident with one of the trains, and a lot of people got hurt, and they covered it up. And in hypnotherapy, we look for things like that, because at the end of that lifetime, the way that death occurred, there's what we call a throwing action. And a throwing action is it's a judgment, it's a statement. And in that lifetime, that throwing action was that there was terrible guilt, that some of these people were injured, that it was his fault, and that he had lied and cheated his way to it. So the throwing action was, I am never, ever going to do this way again. I'm never going to become successful based on lies and cover-ups. So we had to do a lot of forgiveness work around that. We had to really see that this was an experience, and that in this current lifetime, all of the work that she was doing was already sort of karmically balancing that. She worked in a field where she was very entrepreneurial. She was a spiritual healer. She had a successful business, but every time she tried to take it to the next level, it just kept being sabotaged. And there was opportunities to work with big investors, and she just froze every time. So we started to connect the dots and see, there is an absolute parallel here, that your programming, right? This belief that if you get involved with a larger group, they're going to see right through you. They're going to see that you're not who you say you are, and then people can seriously get hurt. That activated that programming from that lifetime, not this one. So we had to go back and see that. The origin of this pattern isn't always from programming when we're young. It can be something we came in with that we are still balancing out. But balancing it out may look like sabotage to us, and we have no conscious understanding. Why does this keep happening in my life? And what she also saw is that one of the passengers that was injured, that they had an article written about telling when they broke that story back in that lifetime in the 1900s, was the owner of this restaurant that she kept going to. She said, I love their food. I don't know what it is. I keep being drawn to go in, but I have this panic attack. It's almost like a panic attack every time I'm there. That guilt was being activated. I want to go in. I want to support this business because I'm trying to pay retribution for what I felt responsible for. So we had to do a lot of forgiveness work around that. We had to collapse that and see that in this lifetime, so much of that good, it has already taken care of that. We had to cut some ties from that life. And then recognize that going forward, supporting this restaurant, being there, telling your friends about it, making it as successful as possible, and also blooming into your business and taking those opportunities, recognizing that you're not a fraud. You are exactly who you say you are, and that you've worked really hard for it and you deserve it and it shouldn't be this hard, collapses that sabotage. And I'm really happy to say that now she's doing extremely well, and her business has already moved to the next level, and she doesn't have that experience anymore, that feeling of terror, of I'm terrified to be wealthy because everyone will figure out that I'm a fraud, because we found the origin and were able to heal it. We were able to collapse it. So our subconscious minds are powerful, right? If there's one thing I want you to understand and get that, it's that they are our most powerful ally. But we have to learn how to navigate what we're feeling. And if we just blame it on the world and the circumstances and the politics, we're really missing the key pieces, aren't we? Because it's personal. It's our experience. And if we believe, and all of us do, all of us in this community do, that we influence our environment and we can take responsible for our own environment, then we need to understand what beliefs we have that are subconscious, right? Unconscious, that come from early childhood or even previous lifetimes, that are now being activated and sabotaging us in order to keep us safe. We have to understand that, and that has nothing to do with what's going on in the world. That's how we navigate through this world and make sure that we're affluent and make sure that we're healthy and make sure that we are balanced so that we can help everyone else navigate it too. Does that make sense? That's the big takeaway piece. When we learn how to identify our negative beliefs and not try to outwill them. You can't outwill them. They're designed to keep you safe, but they're based on negative beliefs that you need to find and you need to collapse and reprogram. When we really understand that, we become powerful, independent, capable, and the road ahead is full steam ahead. And that not only makes your life a powerful existence for your own experience and your contribution, but it also makes you a powerful influencer of the collective future that we are creating, because we are all so connected to one another. We are constantly giving off these micro impressions that we are picking up on with each other, and we pipeline that out. So when you work out your stuff and live, look at the people who are the big influencers. And it's not about fame, all right? It's not about that. It's about living so effectively that people can't take their eyes off you. They want to know what you know, and you become able to share that. That influences our collective trajectory, because they go home and they share that with their family and with their kids. And more people start looking for the positive, not the negative. We turn our cameras away from the world for a second and become thrivers in spite of what they're saying. And that, to me, is the most powerful thing we can do going forward. So with that, I will say thank you. I will turn it back to you in the studio. Wish you a wonderful rest of your show. It is always such an honor to be here, and I am so grateful to Steve. I'm grateful to the team. I'm grateful to all of you. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your emails. Thank you for allowing me to visit you in your homes and contribute. It means the world to me. And I'll see you next month. Bye for now.